Describe something useful you learned from a member of your family. You should talk about what you learned, how this became useful to you in your later life, and whether you taught it to someone or not, and explain why it's important to you. This is Language Help, and today we're studying a cue card. If you like our videos, subscribe, like the video, and let's go. To answer the first cue, what you learned, we'll talk about patience, and we'll say that a family member taught us patience. And we'll use the past tense to talk about this, because it all happened in the past. If you are confused as to what tense to use, you can always rely on the tense of the cue. In this case, it's the past tense, so we'll also be using the past tense. To answer the second cue, which is how this became useful to you in your life, we'll talk about patience in a work setting, and we'll give an example about the ability to wait and think. To answer the third cue, whether you taught patience to someone or not, we're going to say that you cannot really teach patience, because it's a personal trait or aspect. We'll talk about guiding by example. The fourth and the final cue asks us, why is it important to us? And to answer this cue, we're going to talk about personal growth, maturity, and finesse. Now let's see the answer. Back in my school days, my father always tried to teach me to be patient. He used to say, "Son, patience is a virtue. It could have a huge impact on your future." It did not click with me at the time because I was young and rash. But nowadays, I find myself becoming calmer and more calculating. I have found out the hard way that if you sleep on your decision for one more day, more often than not, you are going to change it. This is especially true in a professional setting like with colleagues at work or with your supervisors in academia. The more time I take to think about the potential effects of my action, the less inclined am I to take it. For example, when someone now proposes an inconvenient change in my research, I take their suggestion seriously, and I don't ignore it right out. I think everyone could use patience to some degree, but it's not really something you could teach. I do, however, try to help my students analyze situations and encourage them to think about their decisions before making them. I would love to be able to teach my children in the future to be patient, but I guess it is something that they will have to figure out for themselves. On a practical level, I find being patient shows great maturity and graceful finesse. It also eliminates unhappy surprises for me at work. I don't make as many rash decisions as I used to in my youth, and it's essential for me now to think everything through and anticipate all possible scenarios in any given situation. My work today depends on it. Now here's a list of the vocabulary and expressions we use that you may find useful when you write your own answer. Back in the day means when I was younger. Patience is a virtue is an expression that means that the ability to wait for something without getting angry is a good aspect of personality. To have an impact on something is to have an effect on something. When an idea clicks with someone, it is suddenly understood or comprehended. Nowadays, at the present time, to learn something the hard way is to learn doing something in a way that is more difficult than it needs to be, as opposed to the easy way. If you sleep on something, then you take your time to think it over before deciding. More often than not means usually or most of the time. A setting is the place or type of surroundings where something takes place. When something has a potential, it has or shows the capacity to develop into something in the future. If you say, "I could use something," it means that you need something or you would be or feel better if you had it. To some degree means partly, but not entirely. To analyze is to examine something in detail. To figure out is to discover or find a way to do something. For themselves means to do something by themselves. On a practical level means from experience or in practice as opposed to in theory. Maturity is being mentally and emotionally well developed. Finesse
means impressive delicacy and skill, or when you say the right thing at the right time. Another word for it is tactfulness. Rash, done without careful consideration. Another word for it is reckless. To anticipate is to expect or predict. That was our cue card for today. If you liked it, please subscribe and like the video to help us make more of these lessons. You can also see the other cue cards we have.